Every Souls game is packed with moments that define the experience of that game. These are the moments that get you hooked into the world, moments that you keep coming back for on a second or third playthrough, and moments that stick with you months after experiencing them. This is going to be my favorite moment from every Souls game, but be sure to let me know yours down below. Let's get started with Demon Souls. Valley of Defilement. Just kidding. More like finishing Valley of Defilement. There is one thing that instantly associated in my brain when best moments and Demon Souls were both mentioned, and that is the entrance of the Penetrator. I talked about this a bit in my Demon Souls boss ranking video, but this was such a cathartic moment on so many levels. First of all, this is one of the first adversaries that you are in contact with from the very start of the game. This freaking guy is one of the most obnoxious characters in any Souls game, constantly running away, summoning huge enemies to overcome, and he's creating obstacle after obstacle. You've been building him up in your head as a serious threat, as he's made your traversal of Boletaria a nightmare. So when you are finally getting close to facing him, and he's effortlessly skewered like a stick of chicken teriyaki to introduce a much bigger, badder badass, it got me more than hyped. The Weasel was shown to be extremely slippery and a force that would provide us some serious headaches. So when he is so effortlessly dispatched by the Penetrator, it makes you wonder, holy crap, how tough is this guy?
How tough am I? I had a bowl of nails for breakfast this morning.
Of course, it's Demon Souls, so none of the bosses are actually that hard, but it doesn't take away from the effectiveness of the world building of the game. It's just crazy that a series so famous for its ambiguous and unclear story can do such a good job, better than most games, of pulling me in with no dialogue, just environmental storytelling and a powerful twist. But next is Dark Souls, and I think the go-to moment for everyone here is the realization of the interconnectivity of the world when you first loop back to Firelink, blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, that moment is sick, but everyone's talked about that a billion times, so I don't want to pick the obvious answer. As for my favorite moment then, well, there are a few solid contenders. We have the discovery of Anar Londo as the little hobgoblins fly you over its walls to behold the dazzling golden spectacle. There's fighting ONS to find Guinevere, seeing Ash Lake for the first time. Essentially anything to do with the DLC is amazing, including Go's shot or finding the humanities before Manus for the first time. But I'm gonna have to go with the Legend of Artorias. The Souls games are packed with moments that really do transport me to another universe, like literally getting sucked into a painting that brings you into a snow town. So why does the story of Artorias, and I'm emphasizing the story over the fight here, pack such a punch? There are so many reveals in this story of one of my favorite bosses and characters of all time that continually add charm and novelty. For example, the moment I learned his arm was hanging limp there because it had been broken trying to fight off Manus and protect his dog, and that was his sword arm, so he was fighting you with his off arm, made me question the IQ of the creators of this series. In a good way. I was questioning if they were the smartest and most creative people ever to exist. For me, it was really the ultimate reveal that Artorias failed his mission, and we, some no-named chosen undead, ultimately achieved his task. And yet, we let the legend of Artorias live on. I suppose that's one of the moments I felt the heroism of the Souls games, a series that is plagued with mostly bad people making mostly bad choices. But here it feels like an almost unabashedly heroic and therefore endlessly inspiring tale. Dark Souls 2. Well, I could do my top 3 worst moments in the game. Wait, no, I'll save that for another video. Actually, if you guys subscribe right now, I'll give him to you. I'm waiting. 95% of you aren't subscribed. You subscribed now? Okay, sick. Number 3, the run back to the Executioner's Chariot. Number 2, the run back to Dark Lurker. Number 1, the run back to Ludenzalan, also known as the Frigid Skirts. I joke. But as for the best moment, I gotta go with the reveal of the Dragon Aerie, and in general, the Sky Castle in the freaking clouds. Maybe Crumbling Farum Azula has 1-upped or even 2-upped this place by now, but I gotta give it to Dark Souls 2 for having such inventive, colorful, and distinctive areas to explore. It may not be logically cohesive to exist, as it's basically above an elevator that you couldn't see before, but hey, maybe it's a magical sky castle. I can give much more benefit of the doubt to this location than the Earthen Peak to Iron Keep transition. But while the actual combat against the dragons is exceedingly lackluster here, I love the perilous bridge traversal, the dragons flying in the distance, and the general atmosphere created and colors used. And it ended up having a place in my top 10 Bridges of Souls video. The final swaying bridge as you have the Sky Castle perfectly framed in your view is a great way to transition to a new area, And there's even a possibility of the bridge getting destroyed based on your actions previously in the level. Just such a great moment. But next, we're off to Bloodborne. It would be so easy to pick Ludwig's transition, or Gehrman's cutscene, the cleric beast entrance, the horrific first scream when you're on that ladder by the tutorial, or basically the whole intro of the game. But I gotta go with the dude exploding into a beast in the Forbidden Woods. FromSoft always manages to squeeze the most possible juice out of their concepts, and with Bloodborne it means building the most horrifically terrifying moments that a mind could concoct. In the Forbidden Woods, you are introduced to heads exploding, only to be replaced with tendrils of snakes, and somehow this is vastly worse. First of all, the chance that you even stumble upon this guy and his mini feast is pretty low, with how huge and difficult to navigate the Forbidden Woods is. But assuming you do find him, you're in for one of the biggest surprises in gaming. When you find this man, he's crouching over bloody corpses, yet suspiciously acts exceedingly helpless and asks if you're aware of any safe havens that he might be able to hide in. Then, if you unsuspectingly attack him a little bit, he will explode in a fit of rage and provide some of the most haunting voice lines filtered to be as creepy as hell. This is one of the only jump scares in Souls, and it absolutely got me. I just about threw my controller across the room, and he screams about how you are the real villain in this story. I don't know what's scarier, the fact that he was eating the corpses, the fact that he jump scared into this massive monster, or the fact that you might question that you're as vile as him. Twisted in all the best Bloodborne ways.
Have you got a screw loose? Or is it your animal intuition?
And now we're off to Dark Souls 3. There are quite a few that could fit in the Dark Souls 3 spot, including so many of the boss fights. There's the glorious discovery of Irithyll, which was heightened by the desaturated nature of the game up to that point. Then there's basically all of Killing of the First Flame and the encounter with Soul of Cinder. But really, could it be anything other than Phase 3 of Slave Knight Gale? This is the absolute pinnacle of boss fights in Souls, and I stick by that even with the release of Elden Ring. That's saying something considering I feel like I'm one of the only ardent defenders of Elden Ring's bosses on YouTube, but I just don't think anything matched the absolute perfection of Gale. And specifically, that third phase. There's the perfect amount of spectacle and mechanics where Gale is flying around in chaotic fashion, but you can always tell what's going on somehow. Despite lightning and skull particles flying all over the screen, I'm still in this perfect cadence of dodge, attack that I crave from the best bosses. I've never seen anything in gaming match such a perfect confluence of sound, visuals, and gameplay, and there's a reason it tops my list of best bosses of all time in Souls, which is my favorite series of games of all time. It's actually my pick for the best boss of any game ever, so I can't imagine a world in which I don't pick this as the best moment of the game. It's crazy that they managed to stick the landing so severely on the last boss, on the last DLC of the last Dark Souls game. But hey, I'm not complaining. That crossbow jump shot alone with lightning and chaos everywhere is probably my favorite moment in any game. While Sekiro is perhaps the most cohesive and polished FromSoft game to date, it does lack the crazy, unabashedly bonkers, memorable moments for me. There are some exceptions though, and that includes my pick, which is the Fountainhead Palace entrance. I'm gonna slightly throw in the entire cutscene of the big spaghetti monster literally placing you by the bridge that leads you there, because that was a huge WTF moment that was followed by a different kind of WTF moment. This really does remind me of what Irithyll was to Dark Souls 3, a moment of majesty in a game that was more grounded in reality and normal colors. Fountainhead Palace brought life and vigor to a game that really did feel visually consistent, almost to a detriment, and it's one of the most magical moments of the entire game. Playing through the area itself is equally as lovable, as it provides a brief respite from the typical rhythm game antics in favor of stealth, and is then quickly followed up with some of the best basic enemies of the series. It's also filled to the brim with interesting encounters, from the lightning-slinging dweeb above the water to the carp to the Sakura bull. But that first glimpse atop the cliff down to the waterfall is a moment that took my breath away on my first playthrough and continues to this day. And lastly, it's Elden Ring. This is probably the game packed with the most memorable moments that could be considered. The first that jump to mind are the discovery of the underground areas. For the first time, the massive expansion of the map as you discover how huge this world is on a first playthrough. The entire building being flipped upside down by the celestial dial. The reveal of the Elden Beast and his astrally enchanting beauty. Godric chopping his whole damn arm off to fit on a dragon head, Ricard pulling a whole ass sword made out of arms from his disgusting snake mouth, Melania's phase 2 transition, everything to do with Radahn, but I gotta go with the glorious Vista placed thoughtfully in front of you just after demolishing that maniac at Stormvale. The view at Liurnia had to be my pick because despite how jaw-dropping some of the other moments are in the game, this is one that could only happen in Elden Ring. There are other games in the series that pull off insane boss cutscenes and discoveries in the world, but none, honestly none in gaming anywhere, have pulled it off to this scale. The scene is set early in the game that everything you can see, you can go to. From the moment you escape your tomb in the intro, you are posed with a vast and expansive world in Limgrave. In all honesty, I thought that Limgrave was going to be a majority of the game. When you escape that tomb and you see Stormvale way off in the distance, and then actually get there later on, you know all bets are off. Anything you see, you are doing, and that means when you finally get to that view in Liurnia, every single piece of meticulously curated detail is meaningful to you. It's topped off by having an amazing boss fight just previously with Godric, and it got me more than hyped to bring a fine-tooth comb to every piece of this gargantuan land before me. But that's my list. Thanks for watching, and let me know your picks down below. Have a great day. Peace.